With the advancement of technology, for example, carbon dating, ground X-rays, DNA and the like, how far along the technology road do we go for fear of exposing some of the legends and stories that may affect our religious beliefs, as ignorance is sometimes bliss?
Well, what is technology? Technology is the understanding of the creative plan of God and to follow it as much as you can. And you can never become creative unless you run along the direction of God's creation. This is the basic philosophy of science. There cannot be anything wrong whatsoever in imitating God in His creation, provided that it is carried out for good purposes. If it is done to frustrate the spiritual plan of God, that would be putting His creation against His word. Then of course it will not be permitted. Otherwise this technology is most welcome. And Ahmadis pay very great stress on education and women in particular, because they have been withheld from getting higher education by some of the orthodox mullahs, unfortunately against the teaching of Islam. But our standard of education in women, or at least literacy, is so high that Rabwa is the one town in Pakistan where Ahmadi women are 100% literate, while the rate of literacy in the country for women would be less than 8%. And we go for education all over the world, and we try to create atmosphere which would be promotive for higher education for our children. We tell them to abstain from vain luxuries of the world. They don't drink, they don't go to the pubs or dancing floors, and they don't chase skirts. I hope so. In some cases I know, some odd man here and there would do. Nobody can guarantee anything about the youth. So I don't want to make any false statement, false impression on you. Some Ahmadi youths I know deviate, but comparatively much less.
May I add a little bit?
Yes, please.
I was referring mainly to the Shroud of Turin and the after effects of the exposure to it being fake.
To white? I couldn't follow the question, please. Would you help me?
About the Turin Shroud.
Huh? Turin Shroud. In the beginning I thought that.
Yeah,
but then when you started talking of technology...
The technology was referring to the carbon dating and the technology that allows people to expose things that we believe. And
sorry for following a completely different avenue from which was intended by you for me to follow. Now, on Turin Shroud, there is a version of Catholic Church in particular, who appointed or permitted certain top scientists to work on Turin Shroud, and they published their findings which were contrary to the beliefs earlier held about the Turin Shroud. Many another scientists stood up against this, and they have written books on this. I have got those books with me. I have read them. And they proved positively that it was a conspiracy against truth. Because if the finding of the Turin Shroud is accepted to be totally true, then there is no room for Trinity left in Christianity. Then the truth of Jesus Christ can only be understood in His being a messenger of God. Then there is no truth left in His revival from the dead. Because the person who was wrapped in the Turin Shroud was living and breathing and bleeding. And a dead man could not do that. So the evidence of breath with ammonia, with carbon dioxide, and evidence of blood smudging the cloth all around is a definite testimony that the man who was wrapped in this shroud was still alive and breathing. You see, I have to explain this last bit because many people may not be familiar with this issue. If a man dies in this position standing upright, then the blood from his wounds must flow downwards. The blood from his wounds cannot make a smudge, a round smudge around the center of the prick. It can only happen when such a man is wrapped while lying prone and continues to bleed. And that is the story of the Turin shroud, which hurts so many and makes so many so worried. So other scientists, again Christians, all of them, they protest against this sort of investigation, and also they prove that the carbon dating is not as defined and as precise as you let the world understand. They have proved from scientific inquiry that carbon dating could be off the mark by 1,000 years. So for them to say that Turin shroud could not be traced back beyond 1200 years because of carbon dating is invalid anyway. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, it doesn't prove anything. Moreover, the presence of the pollen, grass pollen on the Turin shroud, which is found in abundance in Palestine and not elsewhere in the world, was pointed out by these scientists. They said, but how do you read that? And how would you explain the fact that this style of weaving was popular in that 100 years in which Jesus came and went? It was not in existence before, was not continued after him. So they pointed many fingers at the fact of crucifixion and the circumstances in which it took place, and the facts relating to Jesus Christ and the times of Jesus Christ. But over and above this, there is one point which is completely baffling for those scientists who would like us to draw different conclusions. The fact that if it was a fake, then the fake must have been done by a foul person who was attributing a fake thing to Jesus Christ and earning some worldly gains out of that. He had to be an artist of some type, but how on earth could he fake an image which was negative? Completely negative image. I have never read a scientist answer this question, except those who agree with the genuineness of Turin shroud. They say yes, and they have attempted to show and prove that through natural means, camera-like effect could be produced, and they have demonstrated it. Particularly, they draw our attention to the fact that the 12 ingredients of the ointment which was rubbed over the body, injured body of Jesus Christ, contained such elements as when applied to a plate of glass even today and exposed to any image through a pinhole, for instance, the image which would be created on this glass would be a negative image. So under what circumstances that makeshift camera was invented by God or organized by God? They suggest, for instance, the fact, first of all, the ointment had some photosynthetic material. Second, the fact that the reserves in the terrain there, underground minerals, were rich in two things in particular, sulfur and ammonium sulfate. Ammonium sulfate has been exported from Palestine for so many years until artificial manure was synthesized. That was the main source of this manure, because the area below is rich in that. And when they decompose, they create ammonia, and sulfur fumes also play a role. So the scenario they have built is that when Jesus was kept in the sepulchre, a stone was placed over it, and there was darkness. So he perspired there, because when you apply ointments to the wounds, naturally you also perspire. So the urea which was excreted from this perspiration also played a vital role in making the whole material photosynthetic. Then we read in the New Testament and from other accounts that due to earthquake shocks, the stone was removed to a degree, not entirely, from the opening of the cave, and then after a while it came back and fitted on that. Sunlight must have entered then. There was no need for a pinhole or lens camera, because the material of the cloth was sticking next to his body. So any light penetrating from outside into that material must have created a negative image. How to fix it? This is the question. Because there has to be a fixer for guaranteeing that further light and further exposure would not destroy the image created under circumstances. So they have proved, the scientists demonstrated, that if sulfur fumes appear afterwards, they will stabilize the compound into a non-photosynthetic compound. And the evidence is abundant that during the earthquake, sulfur fumes also were emitted by the earth. So they say this is the nearest to what we can believe scientifically. Whatever other position you take, it is absolutely unjustifiable, because then you have to involve a fake artist born hundreds of years before camera was invented. And they say even now, when the camera is invented, no living artist can make a negative image of a person sitting before him. It's impossible. Very minute shades and changes, subtle changes in the negative image defy an artist to produce negative out of a sitting person before them. So they say this is a certainty. It was not a fake. If you ask how it could have happened, we suggest this. If you find some fault with your suggestion, find a better reason. But you can't deny the fact that it was a genuine cloth wrapped around Jesus Christ. There are still marks of lashing on that cloth. There are still marks of pricks of thorns around his head. So they say, how can you ignore these additional factors? This is a complete evidence, full evidence, admissible in any court, that he had to be Jesus. Thank you.